The Soyot people live mainly in the Oka region in the Okinsky District in the Republic of Buryatia, Russia. According to the 2010 census, there were 3,608 Soyots in Russia. Their extinct language was of a Turkic type and basically similar to the Tuvans. The language has been reconstructed and a textbook has been published. The language is currently taught in some schools in Oka. The Oka River, the largest river flowing down from the western Soyots into the Angara, is called the Oka, meaning a narrow river, by the Soyots of the Oka River basin. They live dispersed among the Buryats and now speak the Buryat language. Historical context. According to Larissa R. Pavlinskaya, a Russian ethnographer based in St. Petersburg, Russia, the ancestors of the Soyots were proto-Samoyedic hunter-gatherers who arrived in the eastern Saigon region from western Siberia at the end of the 3rd millennium BC and the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC. In 1726, Tunka Buryats spoke of a people who self-identified as Soyo but who the Buryats called Kosogol Yuryang. At the time the Soyo herded reindeer on the upper Urkut River, a river in the Buryat Republic and Irkutsk Oblast of Russia, to Lake Kovskol, Mongolia. Approximately 350 to 400 years ago, the Soyo people moved to Buryatia from the area of Kovskol Lake. The traditional lifestyle of the Soyo people, like others in the Tiger group, was characterized by reindeer breeding and hunting, but by 2009 most people were living in villages. In 1940 the Okinsky region was designated as an AMAG and officially recognized all residents of the Okinsky region as Buryat. Soyots lost their official identity as an ethnic group until 2000. Reindeer herding. Bernhard Eduardovich Petrie, professor of ethnology at Irkutsk University, member of the British Anthropological Society, the USSR State Academy of the History of Material Culture, and full member of the American Anthropological Association, undertook research with the indigenous peoples of Siberia. In 1926, Petrie led the first anthropological expedition into the Soyo reindeer herding region. Petrie described a difficult period in Russian history, claiming that Soyo reindeer herding was a dying branch of the economy. Quote, after the Civil War, Petrie was involved in planning changes in the economic lives of minority peoples of the Greater Altai Sign and Buryatia regions, including the nomadic reindeer breeding Tungus and the Soyo and Tofala. Quote, he was wrongfully accused of espionage for the British and German intelligence services, and of anti-Soviet activity, specifically establishing contacts with nationalistic representatives of the Buryat people, so-called Pan-Mongols, and executed in Irkutsk in 1937. Pavlinskaya argued that later research and data collected from Soyo elders show that the herding tradition easily overcame the period's difficulties and endured until the middle of the 20th century, when the government interfered. Sergei Weinstein, a Russian ethnographer, archaeologist, historian and explorer of Siberian and Central Asian peoples and professor at the Institute of Ethnology and Anthropology of the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow, undertook expeditions to study reindeer herders including the Soyo and published a number of works on the subject. Weinstein argued that Saiyan reindeer herding is the oldest form of reindeer herding and is associated with the earliest domestication of the reindeer by the Samoyedic tiger population of the Saiyan Mountains at the turn of the 1st millennium AD. The Saiyan region was apparently the origin of the economic and cultural complex of reindeer hunters-herdsmen that we now see among the various Evenki groups and the peoples of the Saiyan area. The Saiyan ethnic groups still live almost exclusively in the area of the eastern Saiyan Mountains. In 2000, reindeer peoples of Mongolia and Russia were working on collaborative efforts to rebuild reindeer herding. Plumley suggested that the Soyot of Buryatia's Okinsky region, the Toffler of Irkutsk Oblast, the Tuvans of the Republic of Tuva in Russia, and the Dukha of Mongolia's Hovsgol province, who are cultures of reindeer habitat in Central Asia, may well have traded, intermarried and related across the breadth and width of the science. Quote, though linguists may disagree on the nature of the differences between these peoples, the facts remain that the linguistic backgrounds are Turkic in origin, that their ecological habitats and the reindeer they raise nomadically are essentially the same, as the breadth of this region of the Sines and into Hovsgol of Mongolia covers a distance of less than 800 kilometers, and the annual territory of reindeer herds can be as much as several hundred kilometers in and of themselves. It is very possible that these people have traded, intermarried and related across the breadth and width of the Sines, and that the languages and ancestry are all closely related to the old Tuvan language and possibly original heritage. Collectivization in the Soviet Union. During the period of collectivization in the Soviet Union, enforced under Stalin between 1928 and 1940, the Soyot and other Siberian inhabitants were forced into a settled way of life with socialistic enterprises replacing reindeer husbandry. The Soyots were moved to Sorok, Gorga, Boksin and Orlik, the administrative center of Okinsky District. Many were moved to cattle breeding farms and they switched to Buryat-style husbandry. Ossendowski's accounts of visiting the Soyots in the 1920s. Oka River is a tributary of the Angara River. In the early 1920s, Ferdinando Sandowski, a scientist and writer, traveled through the traditional lands of the Soyot during the Russian Revolution and published a book entitled Beasts, Men and Gods, in which he described his experiences. In 1920, Sandowski narrowly escaped being arrested by the Red Army, who surrounded his house in the Siberian town of Krasnoyarsk, on the shores of the river Yenisei. He fled into the forest and lived for a while in the taiga along the shores of the Yenisei River. He and his companions followed the Tuba and Amur rivers to the Sayan Mountains, where Urian-Hai, the northern part of Mongolia, begins. Urian-Hai is on the headwaters of the Yenisei. After 3 days we crossed the northern ridge of the Sayan chain, past the border river Algiak, and, after this day, were abroad in the territory of Urian-Hai. This wonderful land, rich in most diverse forms of natural wealth, is inhabited by a branch of the Mongols, which is now only 60,000 and which is gradually dying off, speaking a language quite different from any of the other dialects of this folk and holding as the life ideal the tenet of eternal peace. Urian-Hai long ago became the scene of administrative attempts by Russians, Mongols and Chinese, all of whom claimed sovereignty over the region, whose unfortunate inhabitants, the Soyots, had to pay tribute to all three of these overlords. The Soyots helped Sandowski and his companions escape. He appreciated the hospitality. The inhabitants of Urian-Hai, the Soyots, are proud of being the genuine Buddhists and of retaining the pure doctrine of Holy Rama and the deep wisdom of Sakya Muni. They are the eternal enemies of war and of the shedding of blood. Way back in the 13th century they preferred to move out from the native land and take refuge in the north rather than fight to become a part of the empire of the bloody conqueror Genghis Khan, who wanted to add to his forces these wonderful horsemen and skilled archers. 3 times in the history they have thus trekked northward to avoid struggle, and now no one can say that on the hands of the Soyots there has ever been seen human blood. With the love of peace they struggled against the evils of war. Even the severe Chinese administrators could not apply here in this country of peace the full measure of their implacable laws. In the same manner the Soyots conducted themselves when the Russian people, mad with blood and crime, brought this infection into the land. They avoided persistently meetings and encounters with the Red troops and partisans, trekking off with the families and cattle southward into the distant principalities of Khemchik and Soljak. The eastern branch of the stream of emigration passed through the valley of the Buryatia, where we constantly outstrode groups of them with the cattle and herds, while in Urianhai, Osandovsky met Tar Lama, prince of Soljak and high priest of the Buddhist temple whose wife had red eyes. After he healed her eyes, the prince ordered one of the Soyots to guide the party to the Kosogol Lake Kovskol. This was near the Tanuola Mountains. The Soyo guide took them through the Ulan Taiga and a darkened valley where they met Soyo herdmen rapidly driving the cattle over the darkened plain toward the northwest into Ogarka-Ola. They communicated to us very unpleasant news. They were fleeing the Bolsheviki from the Irkutsk district who had crossed the Mongolian border and captured the Russian colony at Kathal on the southern shore of Lake Kosogol and were continuing their advance. A Norwegian scientific expedition, led by Orjan Olsen H. Prince, Anders K. Olsen, Fritz Jensen and J. E. Gustian in the early 1910s provides information on the customs of these people before they were completely assimilated to the Buryats. The ethnographic data and photographs collected by these scientists were published by Olsen in the book, A Primitive Folk de Mongolsky Renomada. There is a Spanish edition, Los Soyotos, un Pueblo Primitivo, Nomadas Mongoles Pastores de Renas. With all its shortcomings, it is probably the best study of these isolated people before they adapted to the larger Buryat culture. It includes a short list of Soyo words, several dozen photographs and a fortunate preserved account of a Soyo shamanic tale of divination, along with a detailed account of both shamanic and lamaistic rituals among these people. Rasidan and Soyo is an endangered language. According to Valentin A. Rasidan, the Soyos spoke their own language fluently in the 1920s. Many Soyo married into the larger culture, the Buryats. By 1996 the language was almost lost. Shamanism. Among the various Soyo cultures, the central Soyo groups, keeping cattle and horses, show Kaka-Mongolian phenomena in the shamanism. The shamanism of Western Soyos living on the steppe is similar to that of Altai Turkic peoples. A shaman story narrates contacts between Soyos and Abakan Turkic peoples in a mythical form. The Karagas and Eastern Soyos have many similarities in their culture and shamanism. It was these two cultures who presented some ethnic features, phenomena lacking among neighboring Turkic peoples in a Soyo shamanic song. Sounds of bird and wolf are imitated to represent helping spirits of the shaman. According to Rasidan, Buryat Buddhist lamas attempted to put an end to Soyo shamanism. In 2000, People's Khural of the Republic of Buryatia changed the name of the Okinsky region to the Soyo National Amag at the request of government of the Okinsky region. In 2000, the Soyo succeeded in restoring the name and identity as one of the officially recognized indigenous small-numbered peoples of the North, Siberia and the Far East by decree of the Russian government.